All right, Petey. Question for you.
Okay.
Hear it all the time.
Yeah.
Is AI replacing people? Is that the future?
I think it's controversial right now. There's a lot of people freaking out. I'm definitely on the side of jobs will evolve, not necessarily get replaced. Now, specific jobs will probably get replaced, but that doesn't mean those people necessarily will. They'll evolve into other more important areas. I think people are realizing that the AI is doing stuff that the humans shouldn't have been doing in the first place. And now their brain's more freed up to do important conversations, important work. And everyone's just going to go so much faster that everything's going to be so much more exponential that those employees are still going to be needed to get really complicated stuff done because there's going to be even more complicated things that the AI is freeing them up to now focus on.
Let's think about it from contact center support teams, which is one of the lowest hanging fruits of AI being able to improve business outcomes, right? So I get asked all the time of, okay, do you make your ROI by replacing a bunch of people, or can every support question be handled by a robot or by AI eventually? And my answer always is, like, there's certain use cases where the AI will be able to do everything. Certain repeatable, relatively simple use cases. Anything more complicated where there's judgment and there's some real like much more complicated than just figuring out how to do a repeatable use case, you're always going to want to have the ability to go to a human if you need to. And by the way, like most of these conversations that a customer is having with either an AI agent or a human agent is there's parts of it that could be really, really well done with agentic AI. Gathering information, giving options, talking through different solutions. But if that's not going to answer the question, you got to have the human right there. And you got to have the ability to give the context to that conversation to them so they're ready to just answer it seamlessly. And by the way, if it's time to wrap up and reschedule a follow-up or anything like that, send it back to the agentic piece to do that. But the way I see it is the amount of hype around humans being replaced entirely in the contact center, we are a long, long way from that happening. And the AI actually makes them better and makes a better experience for the user. And I think that's part of what we got to get to is businesses will provide better service by having agentic answer on the first ring, by having an instant conversation starting immediately, start getting information, and then making the part that does or may go to a human quicker, more actionable, better.
Yeah, and save them for the real important conversations instead of the tedious conversations that they've been having.
Okay, I got a couple questions for you, Petey. Okay, so I think when people talk about agentic AI and the ability to automate all these things, particularly in a contact center with the sales team or other types of conversations, it's all like you hear about like really complicated things. Like, this is going to be such a brilliant system that everyone just gets to sit back and let the AI handle it. But in reality, and you're on the front lines of this, when you talk to customers, what are you seeing?
Everything is super customized and bespoke, as we say now, apparently. That it is obviously so many different disjointed systems they have to interact with to begin with. Everyone has their own custom workflows. This stuff is very advanced compared to what it was just a few years ago. The latest AI does give you the ability to solve some of these complex problems, but they're not just plug and play magical. They require a lot of setup, even with the most advanced systems. And, obviously we feel like ours is as easy as any, but it is not something that is just like, I'm going to go use ChatGPT and automate all this and it's going to be fine. They are not as deterministic as we say. They're not as consistent. They need to have guardrails. They need to know what they have access to, what they don't have access to, and it needs to get it right 100% of the time in these business workflows. It's not the same as if you are asking a question to ChatGPT and it provides an answer, which is probably 80% good enough, which is better than no answer, but that's not even good enough in business. And it is just something that there's so many little pieces that have to work right, that you have to have the right software that knows how to handle these edge cases. Leverage what the AI is amazing at, which is what is enabling these more advanced agentic things to happen now that you couldn't have done 2 or 3 years ago. But it's not that giant leap that like, oh my God, all of a sudden now everything's super magical and I just press the button and all my problems are solved either.
It's funny. There's like stats from Gartner and others of, I don't know, something like 85% of businesses realize they need to use AI to be better. And then like 90% of implementations so far have been a disappointment, and they're not seeing the ROI and they're not seeing the benefit. So is it just a an outcome of the hype being ahead of the reality, or is the reality starting to catch up to the hype?
Yeah, the start was obviously the ChatGPT moment, and it was amazing, and it really is amazing for being sort of amazing for being your personal therapist, being anything you needed to give you general information. But it's not good for those real agentic business actions. And a lot of people jump to this feels so magical, let me put it in my business and apply it wherever I can, thinking like, oh, it seems so magical when I use it, like this is going to be great. And when they put it into real world use cases, it is inaccurate, to a certain degree. It is, and then you want to use it for one thing after another, it compounds its actual inaccuracy. Right. So if it's 80% accurate, you compound that, it's going to continue to be lower and lower accuracy as you need it in these more complex workflows, also like considered agentic workflows. And so they go to apply this, and the technology was behind too, because the moment was ChatGPT came out, everyone's putting in ChatGPT wrappers, as they're kind of called in the industry. And they think, okay, it's going to work. But when it goes into practice, into reality, it doesn't work as accurately as they thought. And what you're seeing now, though, is it took 3 to 4 years for the actual real software to be built around these amazing large language models to start making them be accurate in business with all the right governance and guardrails and evaluations, that now you're starting to see like real stuff hit the floor that works. Right. But they all thought it was going to be magical early, and a lot of people were just selling sort of fake news AI because they felt like they had to get ahead of it. So they were kind of faking it till they make it too.
Right. Well, and the amount of funding and startups that have been created over the last couple of years to go after the space makes it wildly confusing for any CIO or head of IT who's trying to figure out, okay, what's the right answer and how do I make sure it's going to be accurate all the time and do all the right things and actually get real ROI out of it. So like I do think though, and this is kind of like where we're going, is getting really repeatable, high value use cases specific to a vertical, specific to a domain, but ones that are just tried and true tested that you're going to have customers stand up and say, this is amazing. And then you just go repeat that all day long. And then you expand over time and it gets more and more complicated. But when we're talking to customers or prospects and things like that, like there's people who are widely sophisticated and super advanced, and there are infrastructures that are widely like decades behind. And to think that they're all going to be able to be like super cutting edge and make the most of this overnight, it's going to be a journey, and it's all over the place. So that's kind of the cool thing about it. It'll provide value to every single business that can apply it right, properly. It's going to take a long time before every business is able to apply it properly.
So I want to add to that, I want to ask you something related to that, which is not necessarily related to contact center, like automated customer service or sales, but it is related to a lot of that. People don't know what to do right now, and they don't know how to, like you said it, is like a lot of this stuff is, I throw it out there, and I was like, well, now what? Like, is it working? Is it not working? And why don't you tell us like how we're going through, like we've been going through AI transformation because we're obviously an AI company. So we've been like in this even internally for years now. How have we gone through this whole thing of like, yeah, we're trying to adopt all this stuff, but how do you figure out that ROI on it? Like, how do you know if it's working or not?
Right. And unfortunately, a lot of it's wildly anecdotal.
Yeah.
People say it's great. I'm amazingly more productive. Measuring that productivity is an interesting thing, which is another reason why I do think the contact center and support use cases are the greatest and one of the very best
Yeah.
first adopters for it, because it is measurable. You can measure, are your customers satisfied? You can measure how quickly and what percentage get handled at the first touch and how long it takes. And does your customer satisfaction go up because you're getting people the right answer immediately? And then with that, you can put real ROI around it, because there's ROI tied to higher CSAT. There's ROI obviously tied to less humans answering the most banal questions. And when things actually go to a human, it's a very intelligent, coached human as well. And that is kind of like why, this being in the vortex of being able to have real-time business conversations with AI at all times gives us this perspective of being able to see it actually be used. But, again, talking to prospects, they've tried a bunch of stuff just over the last year, and there's wild variance of what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. We're hearing a lot of stuff like it takes, maybe 2 months to even roll out something. And even if you roll it out, it works for a while and then stops working after a while, stops working as reliably after a while, constant maintenance. And that's a lot of people's experience with AI right now.
Think of each AI agent almost as an employee, right? Like, is this one performing well? Does this skill, what's the resolution rate on this skill versus that skill versus another skill? And the ones that aren't performing as well are the ones that are. You learn from the others and you constantly improve. But it is interesting to think of it almost as you score them the same. What is the CSAT? What's the resolution rate? How long to get the answer? What is the capabilities compared to even a human or another agent doing that same skill?
Yeah,
it's interesting. Okay, so another thing we hear all the time, security and compliance. How do I know this is going to work? How do I know it's not going to make crazy mistakes? How do I know it's not going to make up a bunch of answers? How do you respond to that?
So if you are using a lot of stuff as is, which a lot of people are, with the different AI options out there, models, even some of the early tools, they did not focus on this stuff. It was the Wild West of whatever gets it out there. It looks magical, but then again, when they hit reality, when they start to analyze, especially like in our case, it's very sensitive. These are customer conversations, but anything at your business is really sensitive. How do you make sure that the best thing about all this agentic is that it can do things for you? That's like the definition of agentic, is it can take action. Well, we already are so sensitive around what action can you take, and letting something that's so free for all with hallucinations potentially like an LLM take action is even extra scary, because those guardrails or governance, as you call it, of like who can do what can they do, are they allowed to do this, is the AI, what permission does the person orchestrating the agent have? These are all things that are super difficult. They're difficult in just even traditional software. When you put them around this like sort of random, generative LLM, it gets even harder. So there's so many things around this that have nothing to do with the LLM, that are these systems in place, we've had to do for our agentic, where it's basically a combination of no one wants to roll out anything in public without testing it.
Right.
A lot of these early systems didn't have mechanisms to test it. It was press a button, it goes live, you hopefully see if people complain, and if you shut it off if they start to complain. So there's first, you have to have the ability to simulate it. So, like our example, we built something called Proving Ground, which evaluates all of your conversations, your human conversations against your agentic conversations before it even goes live, to simulate how would it have handled those. And this stuff has to happen at volume, because it can't even just be a little bit of like, oh, let me test a few scenarios, which a lot of people would have done with like typing in what if, pretending to be a customer and testing it. Right. You really do need to evaluate at volume all these different scenarios, which is what something like our Proving Ground does. That's really hard to build. That's something you couldn't really do a few years ago. But then even then, say you do ship it. You ship it, okay, great. You think it's done all this evaluation, but now you're like, well, what is it actually doing in production? What are the real conversations? And you can't listen or read every single customer interaction, especially at volumes of any large business. How do they know that it's going well? Well, that's where we have things like our AI customer satisfaction, which will tell you, is it actually working? Not just the human conversation, but the agentic AI conversation. Is the customer happy? Is it resolving it? Is it causing escalations more than normal? These are all things you have to have. And then the last layer is it doing things that it should be allowed to do? Because it's one thing if the customer's happy, but maybe it just gave the customer, I don't know, $100 for no reason. Like they'd be pretty happy. But how do you make sure it doesn't go past what it's supposed to do? And that's where you're seeing a lot of these things like what we have, which is called our Guardian, which is our form of guardrails and governance, where it basically runs over that top layer in production and checks itself to say, hey, are you doing something it's not supposed to do? And if it detects anything it's not supposed to do, like publicly identifiable information it shouldn't be releasing, or any action it's taking that's not supposed to have access to, it notifies and shuts down that agent. And luckily with us, like when that happens, it just goes back at least to human conversations. It doesn't just drop things anymore. But these are like how complicated things get on just like execution.
Right.
And the LM ends up being just such a small piece of it.
Right. Well, it is funny that sounds like how you train your support agents too. Some people have the ability to do more. If you want to get a refund to a certain degree, it has to go to a manager or supervisor approval. They all get measured on their performance, and then you just do the same thing with the agents. Okay.
But now it's automated. So all that, it is like training, but AI is training AI in some cases, but it's a specialized type of AI.
Hey, let's talk about AI adoption internally. You run a 400-person engineering team. When you're interviewing for new folks, hiring a new engineer, what's your expectation on their ability to be AI proficient and great at using that to be a better engineer?
Yeah, it's interesting how things have changed so fast because I think everything flipped around this holiday season where it became, we were already using AI to code, but it wasn't 100%. It wasn't like everyone in the world had already bought into this. It wasn't really until this holiday season where the models started getting really good and the tools around them got really good that now this is something that like was immediately a no-brainer, that it should be something that is a requirement. And it's something that is going to make you better and going to make you faster in every way, and that there is no going back. And so, of course, realizing that, which I think from us being in the AI space at the forefront of all this, we see it and we hear it, it is absolutely the right answer. So we are all in on when we hire someone, it is you need to be proficient with these tools. I wouldn't say you have to be 100% proficient yet, because again, this is still relatively new. People can act like, oh, go find all these AI experts, but like, it's not like AI came out like 15 years ago, like this level. It really is new to a lot of people and it changes every month.
Right.
So most importantly, I would say is like, yes, it's a bonus if you find someone who's amazing with these tools already, but you really, number one requirement is you got to get people who are like, I'm in, I want to learn. I totally agree with that.
Curiosity.
You don't want people to come in and be like, yeah, that's stupid. I don't think that's going to work. Like, because it's not true anymore. Like, they need to have that open mindset and come in with, I'm in, and we'll provide them the amazing training and tools. Because, like, the best thing about AI is it also teaches you very quickly. So we're all in on that everywhere, and not just engineering. Like we talk, right? We're in on all positions.
Yeah, every single role in the company, pretty much. All right, Petey. Good chat.
Yeah.